Hello, welcome back to the Nook. And yes, I'm back after a month's break. I am, of course, Daniel. And before I get into the video, I will just say that the schedule has changed again. There is no schedule. I will do videos. When I feel like doing videos, I just find it's easier that way than having schedules that I'm stressed about. So, yeah. So, what I'm going to be reviewing is this really big book. This is the Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. So this is a trilogy that also includes a novella. So the first book is called The 100,000 Kingdoms. The second book is called The Broken Kingdoms. The third book is The Kingdom of the Gods. And the novella is called The Awakened Kingdom. So I will do a brief spoiler-free summary of each of those books, including the novella, and kind of give my thoughts. And I'm going to rank them, actually. That'll be fun. Just kind of rank which ones are my favorite. But before I get into that, I'm just going to give you a bit of a history with N.K. Jemisin. So she is a youngish female Black author. She wrote a series called Broken Earth that I read. It's newer than this Inheritance series. The Inheritance series is her first work, I think, her first published fantasy. And Broken Earth kind of has some sci-fi elements, and it was the first one I read. I loved it. And then I picked up this bind-up of the Inheritance series, and yeah, I finally got around to reading it. This is not a new series. This has been out for a while, since I think 2010. So I'll start with The 100,000 Kingdoms. So this is about, there's a lot of political stuff. You have Yaini, who's a young woman who's of a warrior people called the Dar. And it's called the Inheritance Trilogy because she gets taken into inheritance to inherit the role as an Arameri, which is kind of a higher political family that live in a palace called Sky. And the ones that live in the palace, they are these gods. There's Nahadoth, who is the god of darkness, Etempus, who is the god of light, and there was Enifa, but Enifa died. And there's godlings that are sons of the gods. You've got Ca, who's the trickster, childlike god. So Ca is not actually a child, but he takes on the form of a child, and he's a bit of a trickster. He likes pulling pranks. And so you're following the first-person perspective of Yaini being amongst these gods, being completely fish out of water. She's in a situation that she doesn't know what's going on with all the politics and the people who might want to kill her. And so she's living in Sky. And this book, The 100,000 Kingdoms, it was really good right from the get-go. And then at one point, this major thing happens, which I won't spoil. And that's when it was so good that I felt like this thrill to be reading it. It was so exciting. I thought, this is such a good story. And so you follow Yaini and her journey, and she ends up becoming involved with Nahadoth and becoming like a sort of mother to Ca. And she does meet Etempus, who's kind of a bit more temperamental. It was really good. So this book was great. And by the end of it, I was like, this is an all-time favorite. And then I thought, okay, because the way it wraps up, I knew that the next book, The Broken Kingdoms, wouldn't be about Yaini. You can tell, I don't want to say too much about what Yaini goes through in that first book, but basically something happens to Yaini that changes her forever, and she becomes more than just who she was. That's all I'll say, keeping it spoiler free. So the next book, The Broken Kingdoms, you follow someone that doesn't even live in Sky. She lives in a place called Shadow, and her name is Ori Shoth. And Ori is a blind woman. So she can kind of see a little bit, but she's pretty blind, and she's an artist. She's able to do these street pictures, and she kind of lives on the streets. She has a lover, or an ex-lover, named Madding, who is a godling. So the godlings are kind of like gods, but they're a bit human as well. And Ori's story was almost as good as Yaini's in The 100,000 Kingdoms. I think I like The 100,000 Kingdoms a bit better, and I'll talk about it in the ranking. But The Broken Kingdoms, Ori's story was really good. I think N.K. Jemisin is really good at writing these female characters that are strong and just full of life and vibrance. And honestly, The Broken Kingdoms was really good. So you follow Ori, and she ends up meeting someone that she calls Shiny, who's a god. And Shiny is someone that I can't talk about who his actual identity is because that's a major spoiler, but there is something very special about Shiny. He's not only a god, but he's a very special god. And Ori kind of gets involved with him. And Ori gets tangled up in stuff where it's hard to explain without spoiling, but she gets into more politics with these other people that have a group, and they kidnap her and they start taking blood from her because she has some ability. And so Ori goes through quite a bit, actually, and she ends up, well, yeah, I can't really say what happens without, it's really hard to talk about this spoiler free because there's a lot that happens. But let's just say Ori goes through an arc where she meets, she has Madding and she meets Shiny, and there's all the stuff that happens there. This book was also very good. I really liked it a lot. And yeah, it's very vague. It's very hard to talk about this spoiler free because then it just sounds like I'm not saying anything. But basically, you just get to see Ori go through just her relationships and her time in the shadow and being an artist, and then later what she goes through with the society who wants to know more about her. And then we get into the Kingdom of the Gods, which is book 3. And I was going into this thinking, okay, obviously book 3 isn't going to be about Ori. It's going to be about a different character. Who will be about? And I was a little disappointed when I found out that it was a book about CA, from his perspective, from a first-person perspective of CA. As you remember, he was the god, the trickster child god. And I thought, well, how would that be good, a book about CA? But this was a really good book. This one, because you follow CA, and I began to actually care about CA. I began to feel like, hey, this is actually a very, very nuanced character, this young man. And he goes through a lot. He meets these 2 children, and they start a friendship pact, but that friendship pact goes wrong, and it messes with CA and takes away CA's godhood and makes him immortal, so he's aging and getting older. He's mortal. Not immortal, but mortal. And so CA goes through that, and it's really rough. And the ending is very good. He has these relationships, and there's a lot going on. I mean, this is basically the climax of the series. The Awakened Kingdom was kind of added afterwards, but this is the climax. So you get to see what happens with the War of the Gods. There's basically another God War, and a Tempest and Nahadoth are involved. And what's cool is the characters that are referenced, because Yaini is still around at this point. Ori is mentioned. But this book, you do follow CA where he's immortal and trying to gain back his immortality. And altogether, when I finished this book, I thought The Kingdom of the Gods was very good. I liked it. And I liked seeing CA's perspective. And I thought, so what is the Awakened Kingdom, this novella? Who is this going to be about? Well, it's a very short book. This book was like less than 100 pages, and the tone of it was a lot lighter. I might not have mentioned, but in these books, the tone is very dark and heavy. There's a lot going on. There's some violence, whereas the Awakened Kingdom wasn't quite to that level of intensity, and it was lighter hearted because of the character. So the character is the child of 2 of the gods, and her name, she ends up calling herself Shill. And Shill ends up meeting people in the mortal realm and kind of causing some trouble and getting involved in politics. And Shill meets a friend, and she meets another godling. And her character is kind of fun and bubbly and just kind of chaotic, where she goes into a mortal place and almost kills everybody, and then a god has to step in and fix everything. So altogether, her character is kind of funny and chaotic, and you get to see her kind of get older, and she develops more of her body and just the relationship she starts. And it was a good novella. So all in all, this series was really good. And I'm just going to say, a lot of people love The Broken Earth, and I love it too, but I feel like this Inheritance series is her best work that I've read so far, and I'm really stoked to read. She wrote a duology. I think it's called The Dream Blood. So that's 2 books that tell a complete story, and I'm going to probably read that next, and maybe I'll review it here. But anyway, my rankings, I would say the best book was The 100,000 Kingdoms. After that, it was The Broken Kingdoms. And then I would say my third favorite is probably Kingdom of the Gods, just because the ending was really good. And then Awakened Kingdom, which was still a great book. So let me know in the comments if you've read N.K. Jemisin, if you've only read Broken Earth, or if you've read this, because not many people talk about Inheritance. They're always talking about Broken Earth. So please let me know in the comments if you've read this, or if you want to read it, if I convince you to pick it up. But yes, I'm back, and I'll be doing more videos. And remember to like and subscribe. And remember, you're always welcome at the Nook. Bye.